Well, I'm starting a new wood project here, and I'm building a firewood rack for our backyard. And I wanted something that wasn't huge, but I didn't want something small. I want something that was not so large that I couldn't move it, but I want something so small that it really doesn't store much firewood. If you guys know me, and obviously my videos in the past, I kind of overbuild stuff. If you've seen my cargo trailer camper conversion video, it's built better in most people's houses. So anyway, I'm going to start out here. What I did is I ripped down some 2x4s to 2x3s. And the reason why I did that is they don't really sell 2x3s and 8 foot long. And I wanted this to be at least 10 foot long. These are 10 foot long sheets of pro rib steel in brown. And I ripped all these 2x4s up. You can see the parts that I ripped off. And I ripped these from 3.5 down to 2.5 inches. And you're going to see why I did that here in the future, because I'm going to put a trim on the outside of this of 1x4 or 3.5. Obviously 3.5 minus 2.5 is an inch difference. These ribs on this pro rib is 3/4 of an inch, so that 1 inch difference will give a 1/4 inch lip above and beyond that pro rib steel. All right, so that pro rib steel is 10 feet long or 120 inches. I made this frame 119 inches, 1 inch short. So when I put this steel on, that steel hangs off the back 1 inch. That way the rain can drip off. It happens to capillary a little bit. It doesn't rot out this board. Brown pro rib, so I got some brown 1 inch pole barn screws. Don't forget your nut driver, preferably magnetic. So wherever a rib intersects a purlin, so row of screws here obviously, row of screws here, wherever that intersects, I'm going to pop a screw. This pole barn screw right to the side of the rib. Not right to it, but damn near. Just make sure you don't over tighten this. You don't want to oil can the steel. You definitely don't want to ruin this rubber gasket. So one question you might have is, should you screw on top of the rib or down on the flat? Now, as an estimator for 30 years of houses and even pole barns, I've sold enough of them to know that most contractors typically actually screw down the flat. They rely on this rubber grommet to seal it off. You can screw up on the rib, and that's totally fine too, but you got to make sure you pin the steel, because when you screw on the rib and you over tighten it, it actually pushes the rib down. It actually makes the sheet wider as you continue to screw on the rib, especially if you got a long run of pro rib steel to screw down. What will happen is the steel will start to walk and it'll become out of square. And it's a good reason why most contractors actually screw down, not on top of the rib. And what's nice about this, it is ultra sturdy and very light. All right, so what I did is I just built a 2x4 box. I put a 2x4 in the middle. At least this is where I'm at so far. Now, at least on the tall side, I'm a little over 6 feet. And down here, I'm about 4.5 feet roughly, just to give you an idea on the amount of pitch on this. And just to show you, I popped 4 screws on each joint. All right, so what I decided to do is add my joist going this way because I'm lazy and I don't feel like ripping apart pallets. And so I got some 1x6 10-footers for the flooring. And I decided to run it this way. And the reason why is because I plan on stacking my wood this way. So I'd want the boards to go in this way. That means the joist needs to go this way. So I still have my other 10-foot sheet for my other wood rack that I'm going to build. But I picked up another sheet at 8 feet long. I'm going to cut that in half because this distance from here to here is about 46 inches. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to build another frame to attach that, which you're going to see here in a little bit. And I'm going to have to put a 2x2 block here, or some type of block to screw down these boards. So whenever putting down deck boards, you always want to have your annual rings facing upwards, because if you have it flipped like this, what will happen is if it does get some rain on this, say like you get a hard side driven rain and this gets water on it, the annual rings will cup the water, and that will make the boards warp quicker and possibly check. So whenever you're putting down decking, especially if you're picking out your decking at the lumberyard, you always want to make sure that the good facing side, which would be the upside, the annual rings are facing upwards so it can shed the water. So 113 and 3/8. Well, I decided 4 boards is not going to be enough. Just too big of a gap between the boards. So I think what I'm going to do is go with 5. All right, floor deck is done. All right, so up next, I'm going to build a 2x frame for the end of this. That sheet over there is 8 feet long. But I'm going to cut this 8-foot sheet in half, which is obviously 4 feet. 4 feet's 48 inches. The distance from here to here is roughly 46 inches, so that should be more than enough. I'm going to build this 2x frame out of some 2x4s, so 2x4 here. I'm going to have a 2x4 going down the middle, so I have something to stack my wood against rather than the pro-rib steel, and another 2x4 here. The reason why I'm doing that is a 2x4 here and here is going to help reinforce these corners so these don't warp. And then I'm going to do a 2x2 on the top, 2x2 on the bottom, and just build a frame to screw this pro-rib steel to. All right, so I got the 2x frame built, 3 2x4s going vertically and 2 2x2s going horizontally. She is nice and light, so we just got to get this screwed on. All right, so I got this frame screwed on. I definitely didn't plan for this, but this is actually going to work out really good. 48 inches, about 1 inch shy from the ground. And I still got about 1 inch to play up here. So if I cut this 8-foot sheet directly in half, I only have to make 1 cut. It's going to be perfect. All right, so to get a nice straight line at 48 inches, what I'm going to do is I just marked my ribs on one side of the tape with 48 inches, connect the dots from there. It might be a little over anal, but I've always said if you're going to do something right, do it right the first time. Easy peasy. All right. Thank you. Yeah. All right, it's all screwed on. All right, so I got one partially built. I just got to build the next. All right, my friends, both sides are done. Both sides are identical. Now I just need to get the outside corner trim on and the rake trim on. And once I get that on, I'm going to put a splice board where these two meet up in the middle. It's most likely going to be a ripped 1x12. It's roughly about 10 inches wide right here. And then I'm going to make a custom wood cap that goes over this. So if I ever need to move this, what I did is where these two met together up here, spack screws. So I got 3 total. where it kind of cinches this together. And this thing is rock solid. This thing is not going anywhere, especially once I get this splice board on here. And when I get the trim on here and the cap, it's gonna look really, really nice. And just to give you an idea how long it took to build at least half of this, I started at 10 o'clock. It's now 4 hours just to build one half of this. I got the gable rake trim on, and they're just 1x4s. I got this kind of flush in the back, maybe about 1/8 of an inch past, just so when someone's walking by, they don't cut themselves on the sharp steel. It's got that 1-inch gap on the back here, so this should not rot out that board. You know, obviously these are 10-foot boards, and I don't need this to be perfect where they meet in the middle. Reason why is I'm going to build a custom wood cap for this. It's going to look really nice. And then there's going to be a ripped 1x12 that covers these two boards, and that is also going to help strengthen this so it doesn't warp. All right, so to put on my outside corner trim, I'm going to put on some blocks here. I'm going to use some 2x3 blocks, some 1x6 outside corner trim. All right, outside corners are on. Nice miter cut there, flush with the rib of the steel, looking good. The only thing I have left to do is do the custom ridge cap with the seam board, pop out these 3 screws and take off the ridge cap, and these will come apart. All right, I'm gonna mark this for the notch. And this is the thickness of 1x material. Gonna get this board centered up on these 2x4s. Just mark this from the inside. That's why you gotta wear safety glasses for those knots. So these seam cladding boards, I'm actually not gonna screw these on until I get this apart, move to where I want it out my yard, and then I'll screw this on. Pretty much everything's done other than the custom ridge cap that I'm gonna make out of these 1x8 pine boards. I'm getting everything you see here is number 3 standard boards from Menards. They're really, really cheap. All right, so from gable fascia trim to gable fascia trim, we're looking at about 39 3/4. So let's just say 40 inches. 1x material is actually not 1 inch, it's 3/4 of an inch thick. 3/4 times 2 is 1.5 inches. So that brings that to 41.5. And I think I want this ridge cap to come out past the gable end caps. I'm thinking, let's see here. I'm thinking I want it to come out about an extra 1/2 inch maybe past the end caps. So yeah, 39 7/8, just round up to 40, add 1.5 inches. It's 41.5, make an extra inch for extra 1/2 inch overhang, which is 42.5 inches. All right, so I got my table saw blade not directly 90 degrees. I got a slight pitch to match the pitch on the roof, and I'm gonna put a slight angle cut on the edge of both of these boards. I think that'll be good enough for a decorative ridge cap. I just need to make my gable end caps. All right, so the wooden ridge cap is done, and I sanded this so it blends in nice down the ridge. And I got this all caulked together. So that's setting up, and I think I'll deal with this in the morning. The only thing is left to do is to take this back apart into 2 pieces. I think I got this designed so I can put a dolly on one end, pick up the other end, and just wheel it right out to where I want it to be. Now for attaching the ridge cap, it's really important to put a double screw on each side of the rib, at least at the ridge cap. The reason why is because when this ridge cap gets screwed down, otherwise these ribs will squish down. And I decided to do the same at the bottom of the panel. At least for the rest of the panel, between the ridge and the eave, I just have 1 screw on one side of the rib. So it's time to take these back apart. So the wheels are on the back there, right?
Yeah.
So then we just grab this and lift up. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, so that looks straight as an arrow. Let's get this ridge screwed back together. Kind of nice having the width of my drill here to actually be able to do that. And I had to put a little chunk of 2x3 here right in the middle for at least something for these ridge top screws to screw into. And I did that on both sides. But yeah, this looks really nice. The stain matches our fence. This is cedar, so it's a little bit darker color, but I designed this just to clear the top of this fence, so we'll at least have something to push our wood against. And especially with these bushes behind here, you know, we kind of push this wood further towards the back. It should be nice and dry. Oh, well, I love woodworking, and that was pretty fun. But here comes the not so fun part. Stacking wood. At least we're getting this wood for free. Good friends of ours are clearing out the back acre of their house, and they had us all cut up. And we love our camping, and we love our camping firewood, and we burnt to it like no other. So time to get to work.